Hey everyone! In today's video, I've got 3 awesome pumpkin-themed neutral fall projects that'll add that cozy rustic charm to your home. You will definitely want to give these a try, so let's get started! For the first DIY, I thought I would make something using these extra 1x2s, some left over from prior projects. You can get these at Dollar Tree or even cheaper by the foot at your local hardware store. I'll be making a couple wooden pumpkins, so I'm going to trim them down so that I have 4 trimmed down to 6 inches and 4 trimmed down to about 3.5 inches. Of course, the actual height is really up to you. To make sure that the sets of 4 are equally cut, I do like to tape them together before trimming. I'm going to glue 4 of equal heights together to form a cross or an X, so I place 2 pieces of wood side by side with a couple tumbling blocks in between. This creates just enough space that's not too far apart to glue another piece of wood on top, perpendicular to the other 2. So I'm just going to apply some wood glue. You can also use hot glue on the narrow side of the wood right on the outer edge. And then I apply glue on the remaining wood. And at this point, I stand up the wood glue pieces and then I glue that last piece on to make what looks like a cross. And then I just wrap some painter's tape around it to hold it together while it dries. I follow the same process with the 3.5-inch wood. I place 2 pieces side by side with a tumbling block in between. Then I glue the remaining 2 pieces on the opposite sides while making sure the base is level and flush. I'm going to paint the pumpkin white, but I do also want it to have that rustic crackle effect. So to achieve that, first I'm going to brush on a layer of glue. I'm just using Elmer's school glue, but you can use any brand of school glue. They do all crackle nicely. A thinner layer will give smaller, finer crackles, and the thicker will give larger cracks. So after applying a layer all over the larger pumpkin, I apply it all over the smaller one. I don't put any of the glue on the bottom, but once that's completely coated, I let that dry for a few minutes. I want it to be tacky, but you definitely don't want it to dry completely. Otherwise, it's not going to crackle. After a few minutes, I apply the paint, and I try to apply it carefully, making sure my brush has just enough paint on it and as much as possible going in the same direction. If the glue is still really wet and you brush over it several times, the paint may start to come off, but if that happens, just gently go over it again with a good amount of paint on the brush. I also stuck a little dowel through the center of the pumpkin, which made it easier to paint. I do make sure to apply the paint on top, leaving the bottom unpainted. Then I let that dry completely. It will take some time to dry, or you can just expedite the drying time by using a heat tool or a hairdryer. Now you can leave it as is, but I want to add some gold leafing around the bottom. I'm just going to be using imitation gold leaf. So first I need to apply the adhesive where I want the gold leaf to stick. I'm using Mona Lisa metal leaf adhesive, which I got on Amazon. So I just apply that around the bottom. Now I don't want to apply it evenly in a straight line, but instead I just kind of dab it along the top, varying the heights and keeping that top edge uneven and kind of jagged. And I just go about 1 inch from the bottom. For the larger wooden pumpkin, I apply the adhesive a little higher, about 1.5 inches or so, since it's taller. Once I finish applying the adhesive, I let that dry. Now it does go on white, and it's ready once everything is clear and tacky to the touch. I got the sheets of imitation gold leaf on Amazon as well. I do cut them into strips first. I'm using scissors, but a rotary cutter also cuts it nicely. To apply, I just carefully place them over the adhesive, gently tapping it in place. I also use a soft brush to push it down. But because of the shape of the wood, the gold leaf easily gets caught, breaking it apart and leaving some areas uncovered. But that was just fine. I just kept applying the strips, overlapping them until all the areas were covered with the gold leaf. Before I brush out the excess, I apply the gold leaf on the other one, applying it in small sections until it's fully covered. Then with a soft brush, I gently remove the excess gold. Honestly, this is my favorite part. It's so satisfying. For the stem, I'll be using a couple of these wooden cubes from Dollar Tree, which I'll be staining a dark color. I'll also be using a couple of these wooden leaves, which I got on Temu. I paint the leaves white, and then I apply some adhesive on the outer parts of the leaf. I want to add a little gold to it. Then once it's tacky, I add the gold leaf, and I just flip it over onto the sheet. And then I brush out the excess. Now it's very important to seal this. The imitation gold leaf may tarnish over time since it's not real gold. I like to use a glossy sealer or satin works as well. And this beautiful, stunning DIY is done. For the next DIY, I was inspired by Pottery Barn's handcrafted terracotta pumpkins, so I wanted to make something similar at a fraction of the cost. I'll also be using a couple of these Dollar Tree faux pumpkins. They definitely have a variety to choose from, but I think these are just the right size, and I'll also be using this larger one, which I believe I got from Target a while back. I'm going to paint this pumpkin a light color. I want it to be light with some warmth, so I start out with some white chalk paint, and I'm going to warm it up with Khaki from Apple Barrel. I'm going to add some baking soda to the paint, which will add some texture to the pumpkins, making it more gritty. You know, I really don't measure the amount. There's really no precise formula, but personally, I do like the mixture to be on the thicker side. When I'm applying the paint, I really like using a round sponge brush. I mean, just look at how smoothly and quickly they cover the surface. Now for the larger pumpkin, I decided to just spray paint it first with a primer since it is larger. And once that dries, I make more of the baking soda mixture. I think this time I added some Territorial Beige to it, and then I applied that all over with the sponge brush. Now there were these little branches or vines sticking out. They're not bad, but I just wanted to clean up the stem area, so I snipped it off. Now to add some dimension and to make it look a bit rustic, I'll be lightly brushing in this chalk paint from Waverly in the shade Sandstone. I'm just using a natural bristle brush, and I'm going to lightly dry brush the paint in different areas. I'm steering clear of making it look too uniform, so I'm not exclusively placing it in the indented areas or the furrows, but maybe in just a few. So I dab on the paint sporadically here and there. If there are any harsh lines or strokes, I blend it out with a damp paper towel, and that gives it a beautiful and natural shading. For the larger pumpkin, I do the same thing, just applying that sandstone color. You can definitely use any color you like. You can even brush and blend in some deeper, warmer colors. I'm also using a little sponge to blend in the sandstone, and that gave it a beautiful effect as well. And we are done. A super easy DIY, and I really love how this one turned out. For the final DIY, I'll be using this wooden pumpkin from Dollar Tree. They always have some great unfinished season-themed wooden items like this wooden pumpkin. I also grabbed a pack of their bamboo rings, and I'll be using the larger one. So step 1 is to paint the pumpkin. I'm using Khaki from Apple Barrel, one of my favorites, and I love using this as a stain. So I add some water to thin it out, and then I brush that on the pumpkin. I don't want the paint to go on too thick because I want the wood grain underneath to show through. So after I add the paint, I wipe it down with a paper towel before it dries so you can really see the wood underneath. In the center, I'm going to place this wooden Give Thanks sign from Dollar Tree on top of this scrap wood plank piece from Dollar Tree as well, and I'm going to do that crackle effect on it. So I brush on some school glue all over the top and the sides. I give that a few minutes to get a little tacky. Again, you don't want it to dry completely. After that, I'm just going to brush on white acrylic paint. This one's from Craftsmart, but any paint will work. So I just brush on the paint, trying my best to only go in one direction. You really don't want to go over a section that's already been painted more than once, otherwise the paint may wipe out. But if that happens, just add some more paint on the brush and gently go over that section to add the paint back on. After that, I paint the bamboo ring white as well. I'm kind of just dry brushing it on, and then I also lightly sand some of the paint out because I really want to match the rustic look of the crackled wood. While that's drying, I paint the Give Thanks woodward with the same color as a pumpkin. Look how beautiful it's crackled. I love that it's just the natural wood that you're seeing underneath. Next, I'm going to add some glue on the bamboo ring because I'm going to place that right in the center of the wooden pumpkin. And this is going to mimic the furrows or the indentations of the pumpkin. On the other side of the pumpkin, outside of the bamboo ring, I'm going to glue some dry flowers. I got a pack on Temu and I decided to keep it neutral and just pick out the light and neutral flowers. To glue, I brush on a little bit of Mod Podge on the pumpkin. I'm starting on the bottom and then I place a flower right on top. And I just tap that in place, pressing it down gently. And then I add some more Mod Podge above that. And then I place another flower on top. And to keep that side looking consistent, I apply the Mod Podge all over that section. Now I'm only using 4 on each side, but you certainly can fill the section with as much flowers as you want. You can even add the vibrant colors, but definitely customize to your style. And just like the right side, I do the same thing on the opposite side. I'm applying the Mod Podge and placing a flower on top until that whole side is completed. And then I gently apply a layer of Mod Podge over the flowers and that section. I glue Give Thanks down on the wood, and before I glue that in place on the pumpkin, I decided to place a small bow on top, and so I just ripped off a piece from a Dollar Tree fabric, and I'm just going to tie a simple bow. I glue down the crackle wood in the center, as well as a bow, and I also string through some white rope through the stem, and this DIY is done. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, bye!